I'll share with you a message I've entitled Preparation for Revival. Second Chronicles chapter 29, and we'll read a few verses if you would you? I'd invite you to stand with me this morning in honor of reading of Yahweh's Word. Second Chronicles 29, we'll begin in verse 1. Hezekiah became king when he was 25 years old, and he reigned 29 years in Jerusalem. His mother's name was Abijah, the daughter of Zechariah, and he did what was right in the sight of Yahweh, according to all that his father David had done. Heavenly Father, as we come today, we're so thankful for this Shabbat, this time that we can set aside one day, Father, and focus on our relationship with you, and we can grow together as a body, and we thank you so much for that. I thank you for each one that's here. Thank you for this time. We thank you for your word, and I pray now as we take these brief minutes to study your word that you would just be with us here and that you'd speak to our hearts today. And we pray that you'd be glorified in all we do, and we pray these things in Yeshua's name. Amen. Thank you, and you may be seated. Second Chronicles chapter 29. I want to invite you to turn backwards in your Bible to First Chronicles. Keep your place. I thought if we're going to study Second Chronicles, but I want to read first some of First Chronicles 29 to you. First Chronicles 29, beginning in verse 10, says, "Blessed are you, Yahweh Elohim of Israel, our Father, forever and ever. Yours, O Yahweh, is the greatness and the power and the glory and the victory and the majesty. For all that is in heaven and in earth is yours. Yours is the kingdom, O Yahweh, and you are exalted as head over all. Both riches and honor come from you, and you reign over all. In your hand is power and might. In your hand it is to make great and to give strength to all. Now, therefore, O Elohim, we thank you and we praise your glorious name." Wonder who would agree with those statements. Boy, that's pretty strong, isn't it? I wonder if we really thought that way about Yahweh, how we would act in our life. I said a preparation for revival would be the name for this sermon title. I don't know if that's a great title or not, but here's what I know. I know it troubles me to look around in the world and see the things that are going on. You know, this is a crazy time. I'm telling you, young generations before us would not even recognize the world that we live in today. You know, evil's good and good's evil, and, you know, you just do whatever you want to do, and, you know, everybody just follows their heart. And by the way, I expect lost people to act that way, but I don't expect churches to act that way. I'm talking about stuff I've seen in churches. You know, I've seen men standing in pulpits, and of course this isn't news, it's been going on for years. You know, they stand and all they do is talk about themselves and want money, 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 give me your money, and all this stuff that's going to come from you. You know what surprises me about that is look at how many people fall for it. Those churches are full of people. There's a video that's floating around on social media that was from Super Bowl, and some of you may have seen this, but some big mega church somewhere, doesn't matter where it was having a big Super Bowl event on Sunday night, the night of the Super Bowl, and you know they were doing all different stuff and watching the game. And at halftime they had some little events, and one of the events that they had at halftime was they had Bible on the stage, and somebody held the Bible like a football, and the youth pastor came up there and was trying to kick field goals with the Bible on stage. Anybody seen that? Yes, for real. He's up there kicking field goals with Bibles on stage. And anyway, I say all those things to say this to you this morning. We live in a world where people who are calling good evil and evil good is not the problem. We live in a world where, you know, all the you know, whatever. I was kind of making a joke, a terrible joke, but you know, we a little earlier with Brother Chris, and Chris, I apologize for that. I told him maybe he should choose another pronoun when he wasn't going to be invited to the women's thing tonight. And see, but let me tell you, I shouldn't have even done that. But you see, it's such a crazy world that we live in. There's been several times since I've been back here to the mountains that I've stood with people and even talked with people for some length of time, and at the end of the conversation, I didn't know if it was a boy or girl that I was talking to. That's not the problem in our society. You know, people rant and rave about homosexual marriage. Listen, homosexual marriage is not the problem in our world. All this stuff, these preachers that you see and all this, those are not the problem that we're dealing with. What those are all symptoms of the problem. Listen to me, here's the problem. People are lost. Here's the problem. People act like that because they don't know any better. And even in church, and I'm talking about, we're a little outside of mainstream, but mainstream church, and even in our church, even in this, I dare say, in this body of assembly, in this assembly, some of the issues that we deal with are not the issues, they're symptoms. And the problem is this, the problem is that people are lost. Number one, the world's full of lost people. And number two, our churches are full of people that don't care. I'm going to tell you what we need. And Brother Jason's a student of this now, and he'll tell you, there's been times in history, if you study church history or study the Bible, there's been times in history where Yahweh has come and done a great work among people. I mean, great revivals, great awakenings. Call it whatever you want to call it. I've even been witness to some of this stuff. We've seen, Rhonda and I have seen things in Romania doing missions work there that you would never see here because we quenched the spirit, I think, so bad here. Yahweh's working in many places, and He could be working here. Why is He not working here the way that we want? Here's the thing about, here's what we need. If all these people are lost and the church people don't care, what we need is revival. We don't need something new. You see, that's what that church was doing with the football, or with the Bible, using it as a football. You know, they were looking for something new, and I think everybody's looking for something new, and they're looking for new programs, they're looking for new teachers, they're looking for new theology, they're looking for something flashy that they've never seen before. Like kicking a field goal with a Bible. Might be like any Andy Griffith fans in here. I know a lot of you were, and I won't get this exactly right, but do you remember the one where Opie was wanting to hang out with the bum, and the bum was talking to Andy, and Andy said, no, you know, I got to make sure that Opie does the right thing, and the bum said something along the lines of, well, you know, why don't you let Opie make his own decision for that? And anybody remember what Andy said? Andy said, well, that's okay, except I'm afraid he'll go looking for something flashy, and then he won't even figure out it's got a hook in it or something, right? Something along those lines. You know, it's great wisdom. But here's what the church and people among church, I think in particular, are looking for today is something new and something flashy and something that they've never seen before. They want smoke and mirrors and a fog machine, and while I'm not saying there's anything wrong with any of those, what I am saying is this. This is what we need. We need revival. We need revival. We need what we had in the beginning. We don't need all this flashy stuff. We need what was revealed to us. We're not even using that, for goodness sake. Am I wrong? Anybody disagree with that? And listen, and we can pray for revival and plan for revival, and we can do all that stuff, but here's what I can tell you for sure. I can tell you this, that first we have to prepare ourselves for revival, and I think this is just where we find ourselves today. In church in general, and how do we do that? I love the story in 2 Chronicles 29, by the way. It's the story of Hezekiah. The Bible tells us all about the kings of Judah and Israel and all these. And most of them were bad, some of them were good. Hezekiah was a good one. He came behind a really bad one. But he was one who came, and Hezekiah he brought revival to Judah. That's what Hezekiah did. Brought revival. And it lasted for quite a long time, but there were some steps and there were some things that he had to do. And I say to you, there's some steps and some things that we need to do if we're going to see it in our lives. And this is what I know. Listen to me. I know just among the believers that are here in this place right now this morning, I know that we've got all the talent in the world to make a difference. Don't we? We've got all the talent in the world. Yahweh's put the right people here at the right time. We've got people who've got skills. If there's something that we need to, what I'm saying is we're not missing anything. We've got people, we've got skills, we've got opportunities, we've got all these things. But here's what I'm afraid, and this is what I think for our assembly and for many assemblies as well. I think a lot of people have a stacked deck like that, and they could do a great kingdom work. Does anybody agree that we ought to be about kingdom work? I mean, this is not about just coming in here for half a day on Shabbat. This is about doing kingdom work. I'm talking about walking out of these doors and make a difference in the community that you live in. And so we have all those people, but here's what else we have in this room and in every room of believers that's meeting right now in the world. We have plenty of opportunity and plenty of talent and all these things that we have, but we also have a whole lot of other mess that we need to get rid of. Here's what Hezekiah did, and we'll get there in just a minute. Hezekiah came in, and his daddy before him, Ahaz they had basically looted the temple, taken stuff out and melted it down and worshiping other gods. They had filled the temple full of junk, and it says that, look at verse 16, that 29:16. It says, the priest went into the inner part of the house of Yahweh to cleanse it, and they brought out all the debris that they had found in the temple. These people couldn't even get in there for all the junk. Here's what we've got in our lives that keep us, I think, from having revival, from seeing revival in our lifetime. We got a lot of junk. Y'all know what I'm talking about? We got a lot of junk. We got some stuff that we've got to get rid of. And I don't know about you, but I'd love to see Yahweh just come down here and just do a work. And hey, Sister Donna, why couldn't he start it right here? Why could he not start it right here? Here's what we need. This is just my opinion for what it's worth, and I pray that you'd be blessed by it. But if we're going to prepare for revival, I say, first we have to prepare ourselves personally. And the first thing we have to get rid of is we have to get rid of all the procrastination. All the procrastination. That's a big word, ain't it? Right? It means we need to do today what needs to be done today. Look at verse 3. Just read those first couple verses just as an introduction. But here's what I want you to see. Verse 3, it's talking about Hezekiah coming after his father Ahaz has been king for 16 years. Hezekiah comes 25 years old, comes to reign. And in verse 3, look at the first thing he does. It says, in the first year of his reign, not only in the first year of his reign, but in the first month. It says he opened the doors of the house of the Yahweh and repaired them, and he began then to give all of these instructions that these people were to do. We read verse 16, the Levite, the priest carrying the stuff out, and verse 17, and it says, and they began to sanctify on the first day of the first month, and on the 8th day of the month they came to the festival of Yahweh. So it took them 7 days just to clean the temple out. But notice what it said. It said not only in his first year, but in his first month. And then verse 17 said in his first day they began to see this. Here's what that says to me about Hezekiah. It tells me that he had such a zeal for Yahweh that he didn't want to wait. Doesn't it? I mean, it doesn't talk about him getting up all these committees and let's figure out what we need to do. He saw a need and he went to it. And many people spiritually, I'm afraid, this is how they think. I believe that they think, why should I do today what I can put off till tomorrow spiritually? Why can't I do that? Hezekiah certainly didn't do that. We're so busy sometimes, aren't we? Boy, we get so busy, and we're busy with kids, and we're busy with life, and we're busy with school, and we're busy with a whole million other things that are on our plate, and we begin to put stuff off. And some of the stuff that's not important to us begins to get pushed onto the back burner. Sometimes people can be so busy with their lives that they don't have time for Yahweh. And they say, hey, listen, I'm going to have plenty of time for that. Once I get the kids grown up and out of the house, and once I get retired, once I do this, and once I do that, it reminds me, Yeshua told a story, remember about the man, he's going to build these barns and do all this stuff, and said to him, you might not better make all them plans. He said, tonight your soul's going to be provided, going to be required of you. what he said. Sometimes we live like there's just like, the future's just out there, boy, just go, 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 go. Spiritually, though, don't need to be putting off the things that we can do today. Why? A couple reasons. Number one, because of this, because tomorrow's not guaranteed for any of us. James said, life's like a vapor. It appears for a short time and then it's gone. And I've said this from this very place and I'll say it again. That means nothing to you people who are under 30 years old. That's just another verse that you can quote, but it means nothing. But this is what I promise you. There's going to come a day, and it's going to seem like you blink your eyes and 20 years of your life is gone. I promise. Ask anybody in here over 50, and that's what they'll tell you. Right? Life's like a vapor that appears for a short time, and then it's gone. And the older I get, the more truth there is in that verse. My granddaughter's almost 2 years old, and she was just born. So I say get rid of procrastination because you're not guaranteed tomorrow. And the second thing is this. Listen, we need to quit procrastinating, putting off the things that we know we should do or we need to do for this reason, because the need is so doggone great. I wish we could get a passion for lost people. I wish we could get a passion for the gospel. There's your free one, Reese. I wish we could get a passion for the gospel and for lost people. There's a great need. Thought of Yeshua, he stood and looked over Jerusalem crying. And he talked about the fields are white unto harvest and the workers are few. There's a great need. Never been a greater need, by the way, in the world than there is right now for people to hear the gospel and for people to hear the truth of the gospel. Okay? We got work to do. Keep your place, 2 Chronicles. Turn to Romans chapter 13. Romans chapter 13, beginning verse 11, says this, and I'm just talking about, let's stop putting off the stuff that we need to do, okay? And do this. All these things he's just told them, given these, here's how you should act. And then he said, and do this knowing the time, that now it's high time to awaken out of sleep, for our salvation's nearer than when we first believed. It's high time to awaken out of sleep. This is what I believe. I believe our churches are asleep. I believe our churches are asleep. But we need to wake up. We need to wake up. I wonder what you're waiting for or what I'm waiting for that's concerned. I don't know, but when I read that verse, I always think about my granddaddy. He says, knowing the time, he said, it's high time to awaken out of sleep. This is how my granddaddy would paraphrase that, and many of your granddaddies probably would have done the same thing. He would have said this, you're burning daylight. You're burning daylight, right? Anybody ever heard that? You're burning daylight. And listen to me, here's what and again, I love you, brethren, and I say this with all the love in my heart, but until we get out of this sanctuary and into that world with the message that we have, we're burning daylight. Anybody agree? Jason, pastor's back there shaking his head. So we need to get rid of the procrastination in our life. Just quit Hezekiah did it on the first year and the first month, started it on the first day. It's a good example for us. So get rid of the procrastination, rid ourselves also of this. Hey, here's a big one. Let's rid ourselves of excuses. If we really want to see revival in our lifetime and in our life, let's rid ourselves of excuses. Verse 6, this is Hezekiah now. He's making this announcement. Verse 5, he says to the Levites, sanctify yourselves and sanctify the house of Yahweh, of your fathers, and carry out the rubbish. And then verse 6, he says this, for our fathers have trespassed and done evil in the eyes of Yahweh or Elohim. They have forsaken him. They have turned their faces away from the dwelling place of Yahweh, and they've turned their back on him, and they've shut up the doors of the vestibule, and they've put out the lamps, and they've not burned incense or offered burnt offerings in the holy place, and therefore the wrath of Yahweh has fell upon Judah and Jerusalem. Hezekiah is looking back at what he's seen his whole life. Remember, he's 25 years old. For 16 years, his evil daddy ruled, and this is what he saw, what I just read to you. Our fathers has trespassed, and they've done evil, and they've forsaken him, and they've turned their faces. This is what he had seen his whole life. And so he's just standing back and saying, this is what it is. But what about for those people who were involved in that? What about for that whole nation who was going for all this false teaching and all this stuff that was going on? What do you think they were saying? This is what they were saying. They're saying the same thing that our church, they're saying the same thing that our Sunday brethren are going to say tomorrow when they meet at 11 o'clock. They're saying, this is what we've always done. Right? This is what we've always done. Here's what we need to get rid of. Listen, church, we need to get rid of the daggone excuses for why we don't do what we fully know we ought to be doing and why we do what we fully know we oughtn't be doing. Does that make sense? Was that English? And I know it wasn't proper because I said it. But here's what we need to get rid of. We need to get rid of the excuses for why we do. I've spent most of my life and at least half of my adult life in church. And until pretty recently in my life, I never had to question what it was that I believed, because this is what I believed. I believed what my pastor believed and what his pastor believed. And I believed what my grandma believed, and I believed what all of my family believed, and all this stuff. And here's what I'm going to say to you. This is what I had to do. I had to question everything that I believed. Why am I doing what I'm doing? And here's what I found out. Many of the things that I was doing then, and it could be, if we're not even careful here, some of the things that we do here might be for this reason. It might be because that's the way it's always been done. Not because it's right. Does that make sense? Not because it's right. Here's what we need to do. We need to do what's right. You know, and you know, sin of commission or a sin of omission, that was theirs, was a sin of omission. They knew what they shouldn't be, what they ought to be doing, and they decided not to do it. And that's the same thing for us today. Our excuses might be more elaborate, you know, but the truth of the matter is, when we fail to obey God, and when we fail to obey Him, and we fail to serve Him, and we can call it an excuse because you can put any label on it that you want to, but He calls it a sin. Because James said to know to do the right thing and not to do it is sin. Did he not say that? Okay. So we need to get rid of all those excuses. And there's plenty, like I said, there's plenty of them out there. And I think that that's the failure of church in general today. I think it's the failure of church today that they've just done all the things that everybody else has done. Turn to Mark chapter 7. Keep your place just real quick. I think this is the self-inflicted wound of Sunday church in general. Let's see, Mark chapter 7, verse 7, it says, here you go, and in vain they worship me, teaching as doctrines the commandments of men. So get rid of the excuses. I don't know why, you know. Again, as coming up in mainstream Sunday church, I didn't question those things because I just assumed that they were right. And you know, boy, where that gets us, doesn't it? Here's what I'm saying. I don't know what they did or why they do. I don't know and don't really care, to tell you the truth. But here's what I know. I know that for you and I, and I'm talking about this assembly because this is my home. And if I'm going to change the world, it's going to be from here. And I know this. I know that I can't continue doing what everybody else is doing just because they did it. I need to get rid of all those excuses, start doing it because that's what the Bible says, right? So get rid of the procrastination. Get rid of all the excuses. Here's a hard one. If we really, truly going to have revival in our life, or going to see it in our church or in our world, we got to get rid of the procrastination and all the excuses that we use. But we also got to get rid of this, and this is hard. We got to get rid of our own ambition. Got to get rid of our own ambition. Verse 10, again, this is Hezekiah talking, and he said, "Now it's in my heart to make a covenant with Yahweh, and that his fierce wrath may turn away from us. And my sons, do not be negligent now, for Yahweh has chosen you to stand before him, to serve him, and that you should minister to him and burn incense." Wonder if you would have been a Levite if you would have thought this wasn't fair. You know what I'm saying? Anybody ever thought about that? Maybe that's not what they wanted to do. Maybe they wanted to, maybe they had, and I have to imagine that some of them had greater ambitions. But Hezekiah said, here's your lot, and this is what you get to do. You get to serve him, and you get to minister to him, and you get to burn incense to him. Your relationship with Yahweh, by the way, should not be about what you can get out of it. It's not about us, and it's all about him, or it should be. Remember, the Bible says we no longer live for ourselves, but for him who died for us and rose again. And we can become so focused on ourselves and on what we like and on what we want that we really think it's our party. And it's not, it's his. We were just invited to it. We can get focused on preaching. Seemed like we had part of this conversation a few weeks ago. We can get so focused on the preaching. I like this speaker and I like that speaker and I like the way he does and he's got good jokes. And this one, preaches 22 minutes and he's off the stage. That's the one everybody loves. Can I tell you, it's not necessarily about what style you like. Okay. Some people can get so focused on that. They can get so focused, Brother Chris, on the music and on the worship, on the fellowship or, whatever. I don't know. I mean, I'm just saying there's 1,000 different things that we can focus on when we should be walking in this place and focusing on Yahweh. Is it too hot? Is it too cold? We don't like this. We don't like that. Some things just don't make anybody happy. But here's what I can say to you assuredly today. I can say this to you. If you're saved by Yahweh's grace, and I pray that you are, you're not saved to be happy. You're saved to be holy. And so, having said that, I say again, this is not about you. But isn't it cool to think that Yahweh even allows us to work in his kingdom and do the things? But here's what we must be willing to do. We have to be willing for us to decrease and for him to increase. And until that happens, we'll never see revival. And again, this is the plague of modern church. Because, dare say, you can go on YouTube and stream a lot better preaching than you're going to hear here this morning. You can, but here's what you can also do. You can also go in there and see many of those guys and gals. I mean, it's not even men and women now. Always amazed me about the TV evangelists and those guys because of how flashy they always were. They got a $5,000 suit on and they all got a Rolex. By the way, a Rolex is the big thing in the world now, I guess. Jason, you got one yet? I mean, got a big Rolex. But here's what I'm saying to you. If your pastor, though, is standing in front of you with a Rolex on, there's a problem. Because the focus is not on who he's talking about. The focus is on him. My goodness, one of them's name's Dollar, for goodness sake. But see, it's me. And we see praise teams and stuff. It's not praise. It's a concert. And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with a concert, but what I am saying is, in this place, and in our lives, until we put ourselves in the right perspective and put him in the right perspective, we're never going to see revival. That make sense? Anybody? That's been my personal experience. Boy, if we could just remove ourselves from the equation, we might see a whole lot of fruit for our work. So get rid of the procrastination in our life, the excuses, ambition, and then lastly here, and I'll try to finish. I don't even know how long I've been preaching, but I ain't been too long, I don't think. Got all the time I need, my man. Hey, listen, if we're going to get rid of something in our life, it's going to help us with revival. Listen to me and hear this. We need to get rid of what the Bible called it in our life. We need to get rid of the rubbish in our life. We need to get rid of the rubbish. Let me break it down for you. We need to get rid of the junk. We need to get rid of the trash. We need to get rid of all those things. Whatever those things are, we need to get rid of them. Anybody ever know somebody, you open their car door and 6 Mountain Dew bottles fall out? I wasn't asking you to point out your mama. I'm just saying. Anybody ever do that? Hey, listen, here's how that happens. Listen to me. Here's how that happens. I'm going to make this a spiritual point. Here's how that happens. It happens because 1 Mountain Dew bottle ends up in the floor and we accept it. 1 Mountain Dew bottle laying in the floor and we don't pick it up. So now I've accepted that as being trash. Now, tomorrow when I stop at the hot spot and get my 42-ounce Mountain Dew and I guzzle it down, where do you think that bottle's going to go? It's going to go with the other one, ain't it? And now you got 2 of them, and now you got 3 of them, and now you got 4 or 5 or 6, and it just keeps building up, and we don't ever take time. Here's all you got to do when you're getting gas. Take the time to get the bottles out and put them in a can, and it'll help. But I'm not talking about cleaning your car. I'm talking about your heart. I'm talking about your life. I'm talking about who you are. And when we allow junk that shouldn't be in our life, and we don't address it, then we've accepted it as normal. And once we accept it as normal, it's easy to just keep piling it on and piling it on and piling it on. That's what Hezekiah's dealing with. They couldn't even get in the temple because they just packed it full of junk. Said it took them 7 days working just to get in there for all that stuff. And by the way, you know, this is a historical document, but I'm not talking about history. I'm talking about here today in your life, something that'll help you, that will push you to be what Yahweh wants to be. Get rid of the trash that's in your yard. And I don't know what it is. It's all different. Maybe it's Mountain Dew bottles. Maybe it's it. I don't know what it is. But here's what I know. I know that if we're not careful, all of us have got something in our life that we're holding on to. That if we'd just let go and clean up and throw away, Yahweh will be able to do something in our life. Does that make sense? He told the Levites to sanctify themselves and to sanctify the house of Yahweh. And verse 16 says they went in and began to cleanse it. It took 7 days to get out all the debris. What kind of junk is in your way? What's in your life, or what could be in my life that might, hinder us from seeing revival, or that might hinder us from coming into Yahweh's presence? Well, I don't know. There's a whole lot of stuff. But anything that takes that number 1 spot in your life. Remember, the very first commandment that Yahweh gave us that we'd have no other gods before Him. There can only be one. Right? Here's what I know. Our life is like a jar. If you got a quart jar and you fill it up with rocks, it'll only hold so many rocks. Won't it? What if there's rocks that you really want in that jar, though? I mean, I really want these rocks in my jar. Here's what you got to do. You got to get rid of some of the stuff that's in there now. Right? I worry about Christian people, believers, who Their lives are so full of whatever it is. Yeah, even church work. Yeah, even ministry, if you're not careful. See, we've only got so many hours and so many days, and there's only so much that you can do. But here's y'all know I'm kind of a numbers guy, and I probably may have told you these numbers before, but this is what I know. I know that every one of us that are here today, and everybody in the sound of my voice today, we have the same number of minutes today as everybody else. 1,440 to be exact. That's how many minutes you have in a day. 1,440. That equates to 10,800 in a week. Here's what I would challenge you to do. I would challenge you to take that 10,800 minutes, if you could, and chart how much time you spend doing whatever it is that you do. How much time do you spend at work? How much time do you spend with the kids? How much time do you spend here at the assembly? Activities that you have, sports, friends, hobbies, hunting, fishing. I don't know. And there's nothing wrong with any of those things. I'm not saying there's anything, but here's what I know, and here's what I believe with all my heart. I believe that until we learn the importance of cleaning up our lives and cleaning up our hearts. And you say, well, I just got so much time, this or that. If we want to, and who doesn't want, I want to see revival in my time. I want to see it. But I also know that revival in this church and revival in this community, revival in this world kind of begins with me and what's in my life to start with. And you can't straddle the fence on this. Listen, you can't get, good water and bad water don't come from the same spring. And I worry sometimes about people who just have so much junk and stuff and activities and a million different things that they have, and we see them here once a month. And I'm not trying to beat you up, not trying to be ugly, but I'm just saying, I'm saying we need to make our priorities our priorities. And if Yahweh's not your priority, if serving Him is not your priority, if ministering to Him, as the Bible says, is not your priority, then you got something mixed up in your life. And again, I say that with all the love in my heart. Don't mean to be ugly. Don't need to be negative about it. But and by the way, hey, listen, don't feel beat up about it. We all got trash. We all got trash. And I'm not going to stand up here and tell you, what yours is. And I don't need to, because you already know. You already know. And I know I got enough trash in my own backyard to clean up before I start pointing fingers at somebody else's. See, I'm not responsible for you. I'm responsible for me. And for me, I want to clean the trash out of my life so that Yahweh can use me. Does that make sense to anybody? Preparing for revival. I'm telling you what we need in this world today is we need revival. And it starts with us. And it starts with you. And sometimes we're not going to get there because there's just so much stuff in our life. Get rid of some of that junk that you don't need. Yahweh bless you. Thank you so much.